The lower levels of Station 47 were always dark, cold, and noisy. Broken pipes leaked steam into the narrow streets while old machines hummed day and night. Poor alien workers moved quietly through the crowded halls, trying to survive another hard day. In one forgotten corner of the station, a tiny repair shop stood between two abandoned storage rooms. The faded metal sign above the door barely worked anymore. Inside that small shop lived a lonely human mechanic named Daniel Mercer. Daniel was not rich or famous. His clothes were old, his tools were worn out, and his tiny room above the shop looked empty and lifeless. Every morning, he repaired broken engines, damaged cleaning drones, and old machine parts for workers who could barely pay him. Most customers ignored him because humans were rare in that part of the galaxy. Many aliens believed humans only caused trouble or started wars. Daniel never argued with them. He simply stayed quiet and continued working with his tired hands. But every night after the station became silent, Daniel secretly did something nobody knew about. He repaired broken toys left outside his shop door. Small robotic animals, glowing learning cubes, broken hover cars, and damaged alien dolls quietly appeared outside during the night. Daniel never asked who left them there. He carefully repaired every toy using leftover machine parts and old repair tools. Before sunrise, he placed the fixed toys neatly outside so the children could find them in the morning. One morning, a tiny alien girl with glowing blue eyes slowly approached the shop. Her small robotic bird had stopped working weeks earlier, and her family could not afford repairs. When she saw the toy flying perfectly again, tears filled her eyes. The little girl hugged the robotic bird tightly before looking toward Daniel through the shop window. Daniel only gave a small smile and returned to fixing an engine. That moment quietly changed everything inside the lower sectors of Station 47. Soon, more alien children started visiting the repair shop every day. Some children waited outside just to watch Daniel work with his tools. Others brought tiny snacks or colorful drawings to thank him. For the first time in years, laughter echoed through the dark hallway outside the lonely shop. Daniel slowly became softer around the children. Even though he rarely smiled, the children trusted him completely. To them, the quiet human mechanic no longer looked lonely or dangerous. One rainy station night, Daniel stayed awake repairing an old floating toy when he suddenly heard metal crashing outside. At first, he ignored it because fights were common in the lower sectors, but then he heard frightened footsteps running toward his shop. Seconds later, the door slowly opened, and a small alien boy stumbled inside. The child looked terrified, weak, and badly injured. Strange burn marks covered his arms, and his breathing sounded painful. Daniel quickly locked the shop door behind the child. The little boy collapsed beside a pile of machine parts while holding a broken metallic toy close to his chest. Fear filled the child's glowing eyes as if he expected Daniel to hurt him too. But instead of asking questions, Daniel carefully cleaned the burns and wrapped fresh bandages around the boy's arms. The frightened child stayed silent the entire time. Outside the shop, heavy footsteps suddenly echoed through the dark hallway. Daniel slowly looked toward the door as angry alien voices moved closer. The sound of metal weapons scraping against the walls became louder every second. The injured child immediately panicked and tried hiding behind old repair machines. Daniel understood the situation instantly. Somebody dangerous was hunting the boy. The mechanic quietly turned off the shop lights and reached for an old plasma repair tool hanging beside his workbench. Then a loud voice thundered from outside the door. "Open the shop, human, that child belongs to us." The repair shop became completely silent after the threatening voice echoed through the hallway. Daniel stood near the locked door without moving while the frightened alien boy hid behind a pile of broken machine parts. Outside, heavy footsteps slowly circled the shop like predators hunting trapped prey. The old metal walls shook every time somebody slammed against the door. Daniel's tired eyes carefully studied the room while his hand tightened around the plasma repair tool. The injured boy's breathing became faster with fear. His small hands trembled while holding the damaged metallic toy against his chest. Daniel noticed fresh bruises across the child's face and neck. Somebody had hurt him badly for a long time. Without speaking, Daniel quietly pointed toward a hidden maintenance hatch beneath the floor. The child quickly crawled inside the narrow space while Daniel covered the hatch with heavy machine parts just seconds before the shop door exploded open. 3 large reptilian aliens stormed inside carrying electric weapons. Their leader was massive, with dark scales covering his face and glowing yellow eyes filled with anger. A long scar stretched across his neck like an old battle wound. The gang leader slowly looked around the tiny repair shop before stopping his eyes on Daniel. The giant alien smiled coldly after noticing the human standing alone beside the workbench. "We know the child came here," the reptilian growled. "Hand him over, and nobody gets hurt." Daniel stayed calm. He quietly placed an engine tool onto the table and continued wiping grease from his hands as if nothing dangerous was happening. The gang members became irritated by his silence. One criminal kicked over a pile of repaired toys, sending robotic animals crashing across the floor. Another smashed a glowing learning cube beneath his heavy boot. Daniel's face remained expressionless, but deep inside, anger slowly started growing. The gang leader grabbed Daniel by the shirt and slammed him against the wall. Sparks fell from the ceiling as old pipes shook violently. The reptilian alien moved closer until his sharp teeth almost touched Daniel's face. He demanded the child again while threatening to burn down the entire shop. But Daniel simply looked into the alien's eyes without fear. That calm reaction confused the criminals more than resistance would have. Suddenly, small footsteps echoed from outside the hallway. The reptilian leader turned toward the sound just as several alien children slowly appeared near the damaged doorway. The tiny blue-eyed girl stood at the front while holding her repaired robotic bird tightly in her arms. Behind her, more children nervously gathered together. Some carried broken toys Daniel had fixed earlier. Others looked frightened but refused to leave. The criminals laughed after seeing only children standing there. Then the little blue-eyed girl spoke softly. "Please don't hurt the human." The hallway became strangely quiet after those words. The reptilian gang leader stared at the children with disbelief. Nobody in the lower sectors defended humans, especially not alien children. But one by one, the frightened kids slowly moved closer to Daniel's shop. A tiny insect-like child nervously stood beside the human mechanic. Another small alien picked up the smashed robotic toy from the floor and held it protectively against her chest. Daniel looked at the children in silence. For years, nobody had ever stood beside him during danger. Not since the war back on Earth. Memories briefly flashed through his mind. Destroyed cities, burning ships, terrified civilians running through smoke-filled streets. Daniel quickly pushed those painful memories away before anybody noticed the sadness in his eyes. The reptilian leader finally released Daniel and stepped backward with irritation. He realized causing violence in front of children could attract unwanted station security. But before leaving, the giant alien pointed one sharp claw toward Daniel with deadly warning. "You protect that child again," he hissed, "and this entire sector will suffer." The gang slowly disappeared into the dark hallway moments later. The children remained frozen with fear until the heavy footsteps finally faded away. Only then did Daniel quietly lock the damaged door again. The repair shop felt smaller than ever. Nervous silence filled the room while steam drifted through broken ceiling pipes above them. Then the hidden floor hatch slowly opened. The injured alien boy carefully climbed out while staring at the children surrounding Daniel. Tears quietly filled the child's glowing eyes. For the first time in many years, somebody had protected him instead of selling him away. The little boy looked toward Daniel with confusion, fear, and hope mixed together. After several silent seconds, the child finally whispered his name. Cairo. And deep inside Station 47, the lonely human mechanic unknowingly took the first step toward becoming something far greater than a simple repairman. Morning slowly returned to the lower sectors of Station 47, but the repair shop no longer felt quiet or safe. News about the human mechanic protecting an alien child had already started spreading through the crowded station corridors. Workers whispered about it inside food markets, repair tunnels, and factory halls. Some people called Daniel foolish for standing against criminal gangs, while others secretly admired his courage. Inside the small repair shop, however, Daniel cared less about rumors and more about the frightened child sitting silently beside the workbench. Kiro barely spoke during the morning. The small alien boy quietly watched Daniel repair broken machines while holding the damaged metallic toy close to his chest. Every sudden noise made the child nervous. Even the sound of heavy footsteps outside caused fear to flash across his glowing eyes. Daniel slowly realized that Kiro had spent years surviving violence and abuse. The child behaved more like somebody escaping a battlefield than a normal kid. The other alien children arrived later carrying tiny gifts and repaired toys. The blue-eyed girl brought warm food stolen from her family kitchen, while another insect-like child carried fresh bandages for Kiro's injuries. Slowly, the repair shop became filled with soft laughter again. Some children sat on the floor drawing colorful pictures beside old machine parts. Others watched Daniel work with fascination while asking endless questions about human tools and engines. For the first time in years, the lonely repair shop started feeling alive. Daniel secretly enjoyed the noise even though he pretended to stay serious. The children reminded him of memories he buried long ago. Before the war destroyed his life on Earth, Daniel once dreamed about having a family of his own. But war changed everything. He lost his parents, his younger sister, and eventually his entire home city during the final bombings. Since then, Daniel avoided emotional connections because losing people became too painful. Yet somehow these strange alien children were slowly breaking the walls around his heart. Later that evening, Kiro finally spoke more about his past. The child revealed that many orphaned psychic children disappeared inside Station 47 every year. Criminal gangs secretly sold them to illegal laboratories and wealthy buyers across the galaxy. Because psychic abilities were rare and dangerous, powerful people paid enormous money for children like Kiro. Some victims never returned. Others came back broken and terrified. The entire station government pretended not to notice because corruption infected almost every level of power. Daniel listened quietly while anger slowly burned inside him. He had seen evil before during wartime, but hearing children treated like objects disgusted him deeply. The other kids also lowered their heads with sadness because many of them lost friends to the same criminal networks. One small alien girl admitted her older brother disappeared months earlier after armed men dragged him away during the night. Nobody ever investigated what happened. Suddenly, loud alarms echoed across the lower sectors. Red emergency lights flashed through the dirty station hallways while frightened civilians hurried indoors. Daniel quickly moved toward the shop window and looked outside. Heavy armored vehicles slowly entered the sector while armed security drones floated above the streets. Something serious was happening. The children immediately became nervous after recognizing the station security symbols painted on the vehicles. Then the station broadcast system activated. A cold robotic voice announced that dangerous psychic fugitives were hiding somewhere inside the lower sectors. Citizens were ordered to report suspicious activity immediately. Security forces promised severe punishment for anyone protecting illegal psychic children. The moment the announcement ended, Kiro's face turned pale with fear. The little boy stepped backward until his body touched the wall behind him. Daniel immediately understood the truth. The government was hunting Kiro now. Panic quietly spread through the repair shop. Some children started crying, while others nervously looked toward the locked doors and windows. Daniel's mind raced quickly as the sound of military footsteps echoed closer outside. He knew station security would search every building in the sector soon. If they found Kiro, the child would disappear forever like the others. Then something unexpected happened. Kiro's emotions suddenly became unstable. The damaged metallic toy floating in his hand slowly rose into the air by itself. Nearby tools started shaking violently across Daniel's workbench. Lights flickered overhead while loose machine parts rolled across the floor. The frightened children backed away in shock as invisible energy spread through the room. Kiro looked terrified. The boy desperately tried stopping the strange psychic power, but fear only made the energy stronger. Small objects began floating around the repair shop while metal walls vibrated loudly. Outside, security drones suddenly detected the unusual energy signal. Red scanning lights instantly focused on Daniel's building. The frightened children realized the terrible truth at the same time. Station security was coming directly toward the repair shop. And this time, escape might no longer be possible. Red warning lights flashed violently across the repair shop while security alarms echoed through the lower sectors of Station 47. Outside the cracked windows, armed drones slowly moved through the narrow streets searching for the source of the psychic energy burst. Inside the shop, fear spread among the children like wildfire. Small metal tools floated around the room while sparks rained from overloaded machines. Kiro stood frozen near the wall, trembling uncontrollably as the psychic power continued growing stronger around him. Daniel immediately stepped toward the frightened boy without hesitation. The other children watched nervously as nearby machine parts crashed onto the floor around them. Kiro's glowing eyes filled with panic because every time his powers awakened, terrible things happened afterward. People screamed at him, criminals hunted him, and soldiers treated him like a dangerous monster. The little boy kept apologizing through tears while desperately trying to control the invisible energy surrounding the room. But Daniel did something nobody expected. Instead of stepping away in fear, the human mechanic calmly placed both hands on Kiro's shoulders. His voice stayed soft and steady, even while alarms screamed outside the building. Daniel quietly told the child to breathe slowly and focus only on his voice. The terrified children surrounding them remained silent while watching the strange moment unfold. Little by little, the floating tools stopped shaking. The flickering lights slowly became stable again. Kiro looked up at Daniel with confusion filling his glowing eyes. The child could not understand why the human mechanic was not afraid of him. Every adult Kiro met before either hated him or wanted to use his powers for money. But Daniel simply treated him like a scared child needing help. That feeling was completely new to Kiro. For the first time in many years, the small alien boy felt safe beside somebody. Unfortunately, the danger outside was becoming worse. Heavy armored footsteps suddenly thundered through the hallway leading toward the repair shop. Security drones scanned nearby buildings while soldiers shouted orders through loudspeakers. Daniel quickly turned off the remaining lights inside the shop and signaled for the children to stay quiet. The younger kids immediately hid beneath tables, behind machine piles, and inside old storage compartments. Fear covered every face inside the dark room. Then loud banging exploded against the shop door. "Open immediately," a soldier shouted from outside. "Station security inspection." The children froze with terror. One small insect-like girl started crying softly while clutching a repaired robotic doll against her chest. Daniel silently looked around the crowded repair shop filled with frightened children who had nowhere else to go. Deep inside, he understood one painful truth. If security forces found these children tonight, many of them would never return. Without wasting another second, Daniel activated an old hidden maintenance tunnel beneath the shop floor. Years earlier, smugglers secretly used the tunnel during station riots before abandoning it. Dust and steam rose from the dark opening as Daniel quickly guided the children toward it. Kiro helped carry the younger kids while the others nervously climbed into the narrow underground passage one by one. The banging against the door became louder. Metal locks slowly started breaking apart under heavy force. Daniel knew they had only seconds left before security soldiers entered the shop. After making sure every child safely entered the tunnel, Daniel prepared to follow them. But suddenly the tiny blue-eyed girl stopped near the entrance and looked back at him with tears in her eyes. "Are you coming too?" she whispered fearfully. Daniel paused for a moment. Nobody had asked him something like that in years. The question hit his heart harder than any weapon ever could. The children were not simply running toward safety anymore. They were waiting for him. They trusted him completely. The lonely human mechanic who spent years avoiding emotional connections suddenly realized these children no longer saw him as a stranger. They saw him as family. Daniel quickly forced the emotions away and gently nodded toward the frightened girl. Relief instantly filled the child's face. The little group hurried deeper into the tunnel just seconds before the repair shop door finally exploded open behind them. Armed soldiers stormed inside with glowing rifles while security drones scanned every corner of the dark room. But the shop was empty. Meanwhile, Daniel carefully guided the children through the cold underground maintenance tunnels beneath Station 47. Rusty pipes leaked steam overhead while ancient electrical cables flickered along the narrow walls. Some younger children struggled to walk because of fear and exhaustion. Without hesitation, Daniel carried two smaller kids in his arms while Kiro helped support another injured child beside him. As they moved deeper underground, the tiny blue-eyed girl quietly walked beside Daniel. After several silent minutes, she softly grabbed the sleeve of his old jacket. Daniel looked down in surprise while the nervous child tried finding courage to speak. Then she quietly asked the question that changed everything. "Can we stay with you?" "Dad?" Daniel suddenly stopped walking. The dark tunnel became silent around him, while the frightened children nervously waited for his answer. For years, Daniel buried every painful memory connected to family and love. He believed those parts of his life died long ago during Earth's war. But now, surrounded by abandoned alien children searching for safety, the lonely mechanic felt something inside his broken heart slowly come alive again, and deep inside the underground tunnels of Station 47, Daniel realized his life would never be the same again. The underground maintenance tunnels beneath Station 47 felt cold, endless, and dangerously quiet. Steam drifted from broken pipes overhead while weak emergency lights flickered across the rusty walls. Daniel carefully led the frightened children deeper through the narrow passageways, constantly checking behind them for security drones or soldiers. The younger kids stayed close together while carrying their repaired toys like tiny treasures. Even in the middle of fear and exhaustion, they refused to leave those gifts behind because the toys reminded them of safety and hope. But Daniel's mind remained trapped on the words the blue-eyed girl had spoken earlier. Dad. That single word echoed repeatedly inside his head while he walked through the dark tunnels. Daniel had spent years forcing himself to stay emotionally distant from everyone around him. After losing his family during Earth's war, he convinced himself attachment only created pain. Yet these abandoned alien children somehow broke through the walls he spent years building around his heart. The realization terrified him almost as much as the soldiers hunting them. Meanwhile, Kiro silently watched Daniel from nearby. The psychic child noticed the emotions hidden behind the mechanic's tired eyes even though Daniel tried concealing them. Kiro had spent his entire life reading fear, anger, and cruelty in others. But the human mechanic felt different. Daniel protected people without expecting rewards. He comforted frightened children without wanting control over them. To Kiro, that kind of kindness almost seemed unreal. After several hours underground, the group finally reached an abandoned transportation station hidden beneath the lower sectors. Old cargo trains once carried industrial supplies through those tunnels decades earlier, but now the place looked forgotten and broken. Rust covered the walls, damaged lights hung from the ceiling, and dust filled the empty platforms. Still, compared to the dangerous streets above, the abandoned station felt safe enough for the exhausted children to rest temporarily. The younger kids quickly fell asleep beside piles of old cargo containers, while Daniel searched the area for food, water, and usable supplies. Kiro quietly followed him through the dark station corridors. After a long silence, the small alien boy finally asked why Daniel kept helping them even though it placed his own life in danger. The question forced Daniel to stop walking for a moment. For several seconds, the human mechanic said nothing, then he slowly admitted the truth. Years ago during Earth's war, Daniel once saw frightened children abandoned in destroyed cities while soldiers and governments ignored their suffering. He remembered hearing hungry kids crying beneath collapsed buildings while powerful leaders argued about politics and victory. Daniel confessed that he failed to save many innocent people back then. The guilt never disappeared no matter how many years passed. Helping these alien children felt like his second chance to finally do something right. Kiro listened quietly while sadness filled his glowing eyes. The child realized Daniel carried emotional wounds just as deep as his own. The lonely mechanic simply hid the pain better than others. Suddenly, loud explosions echoed from somewhere above the tunnels. Dust rained from the station ceiling as frightened children instantly woke in panic. Daniel rushed toward the nearest tunnel entrance and carefully looked outside. In the distance, bright flashes of fire reflected through the underground passageways. Security forces were destroying entire sections of the lower sectors while searching for the escaped psychic children. The station government no longer cared about civilian safety. They wanted results. Fear spread through the abandoned station. Some younger children started crying while older ones nervously discussed escape routes. Kiro's psychic powers also became unstable again after sensing nearby violence. Small pieces of metal slowly lifted into the air around him. Daniel quickly calmed the frightened boy before the energy grew stronger. But deep inside, Daniel understood their situation was becoming impossible. Then something unexpected happened. A weak emergency broadcast suddenly activated through the abandoned station speakers. At first, everyone expected another government warning. But instead, A nervous civilian voice secretly transmitted illegal news reports across the underground channels. The leaked footage from Daniel's repair shop raid had spread beyond Station 47. Millions of people across nearby systems had now seen alien children protecting the human mechanic from armed soldiers. Civilians everywhere started questioning why abandoned children trusted a poor human worker more than their own government. Refugee groups openly criticized station leadership while protests slowly formed inside nearby trade sectors. Daniel stared silently at the old speakers while the children listened in shock. For the first time, the station government was losing control of the story, but the broadcast continued with even worse news. Authorities had officially labeled Daniel Mercer a dangerous criminal responsible for kidnapping alien children and spreading illegal psychic activity. Massive rewards were now offered for information leading to his capture. Worse still, mercenary hunters from outside systems were already arriving at Station 47 searching for him. The abandoned station instantly became silent again. The children slowly looked toward Daniel with fear and uncertainty filling their faces. The lonely mechanic finally understood the terrible truth. There was no returning to normal life anymore. The repair shop was gone. His old peaceful existence had ended forever. And somewhere above the underground tunnels of Station 47, hunters were already beginning the search for the human mechanic the galaxy suddenly could not stop talking about.